Hey everyone, welcome to Tuesday's Math. Today we're going to be working on line plots, but again we are going to start with a warm-up question. So we have these fraction addition problems. Now remember, the denominator doesn't change, same with fraction subtraction. Pause the video, try to solve them for yourselves, and in a second I'll give you the answers. See you in a second. All right, if I start here, what I'd first said was that the denominators stay the same. So it's still going to be fourth. 2 plus 1 is 3. Same thing on the bottom. The denominator is the same for each one of these. So I know it's going to be 6. 3 plus 1 is 4. Sometimes when you have these ones that are hard to remember, I like to write a little note to myself so that I remember that 3 plus 1 was 4. Then I can just do 4 plus 1 is 5, and my answer is 5, 6. Down here, starting the same, the denominator is the same across, so it should be 12. 4 plus 5 is 9, plus 7 is 16. Now this is technically an improper fraction, so if I wanted to, I could make it a mixed number by taking this 16 twelfths, subtracting 12 from the 16, that would get me 4. This 16 that I subtracted is going to become 1, or no, sorry, not the 16. The 12 that I subtracted is going to become the whole, and then this 4 is going to become 4 twelfths. Give me 1 second to erase my board. Now, we're going to be working on line plots, which is a little bit different. We're going to start with an easy one so that you get an idea of what I'm trying to do. And then we're going to move on to make it a little bit more difficult. So I have some things already set up. Usually you're going to be using different types of data for this. So this first one I have is number of days students missed. And in this scenario, I have about 15 kids in my class. If you look up here, these are the days that these students missed. So to start your line plot, you're going to need to make a line. I see 0 as my smallest number and 5 as my biggest number. So I'm going to make sure that that happens on my line. Give me 1 second. Board's still a little bit wet. So now I've got my line, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And to make a line plot, it's actually pretty simple. What you're going to do is make an X for each one of these numbers on your board. So like this first one, this 0, I'm going to put an X right here. This next one is 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 5, 2, 1, 3, 0, 0, 2. And there we have a line plot for the number of days students missed in this scenario or this made-up classroom. You can use this information to tell a few different things. The first thing I can tell is that the most that any student missed was 5 because we have 1 X here. The majority of students didn't miss any days of school because we have 5 students that did that. That will just give you a lot of different information. The second most one was missed 1 day. So that is one way to make a line plot. We're actually going to make another one. Again, based on the days of school that students missed, but this next one, it's going to have halves in here because a lot of times students don't just miss a whole day. Sometimes they'll miss half of a day. So give me a second for my board to dry. So in this scenario, I still have 15 students. I'm going to notice that 0 is still my smallest, so I'm going to start with that. My biggest isn't 5 this time. I think it's 3.5. So we're going to get to 3.5. But I need to do this one by halves. So if we start here, we're going to go 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. We'll put 4 on here just to finish out our board. So as you can see, we're going up by a half each time. 0, half, 1, 1/2, 2, 2/2, 3, 3.5, 4. But besides adding halves, we're doing the same exact thing on this line plot. We're just going to put an X for each of these numbers. So we have 0 to start, 1, 1/2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 0, 1.5. I almost put it on a half, so be careful with that. 2.5 when you're doing this. 2, 1, 1.5, 1.5, 2.5, and 0. So here's my new line plot using halves. So as you can see, it's very similar to using whole numbers, but we just used halves this time. But we're actually going to need to go a step further and include not just halves, but actually quarters as well. Give me a second for my board to finish. It's a little bit dirty. Now, the next set of numbers I'm going to do is no longer days of school missed, but actually something that kids, at least in Iowa, used to do, and that would be to catch bugs during the summer. And in this scenario, this is the measurement of bugs in inches. I know you don't get a lot of bugs in Kuwait, but if you go to Canada or the US, it's something you could do where you could measure the length of the bugs that you get. Give me 1 second. I'm going to flip this around so that I have the non-wet side so that we can get started. So, same thing. I need to start with a line. I'm going to start at 0 again. And since I'm doing fourths, my first number is going to be 1/4. The next one is going to be 1/2 or 2/4. But as many of you may know, 1/2 and 2/4 are equivalent. After that, it would be 3/4 and then 1. I notice on mine that it goes all the way until at least 2.5. So let's go through that just so that we have everything. So this would be 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 1 3/4, 2. I'm making these numbers a little bit bigger just so that I know that they're whole numbers. 2 1/4, 2 1/2, 2 3/4, and 3. So that was kind of the hard part of this. Now I just need to go through the same thing, put X's down for each of the numbers I see. So I have 2 1/4 first. I have 1/2, 2.5, 1, 2, 1, 1 3/4, 1.5, 2 1/4, 1/2, 1/2, 1/4, 1 3/4, 3/4, and 3/4. So that would be my last line plot using force. You'll need to be able to make some of these for yourselves. On your homework, they're going to give you different data to make these line plots, and then you're going to have to answer some questions about that data. So look at the assignment on the page, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.